So tonight we want to talk about learning the form environment, the next step in more or less what we'll be doing for the remainder of the semester. Now, the form environment is hidden under this create form tool, much like with working with the sketch environment. You have to select the sketch environment, select your profile plane, starting plane, whatever you're going to be working on, and that opens up a whole new set of tools. Similarly, with create form, this little like pink gumball with a plus symbol, as you can see, opens up a new form environment or mode that opens up a new set of tools that opens up into the timeline. Now, as you'll see in the bottom here of the timeline, I've done a variety of different features here, and I've made some different adjustments to some things. But one of the main things, like the form environment or like the sketch environment, the form environment does not keep incremental time history. It does not keep incremental components in time that you cannot work back and forth through. It is not a parametric modeling environment element like all the other solid tools, things like that, entering things either as a solid or even with a sketch environment where you can enter things numerically. The form environment does not do that. Like the sketch environment, whatever you do in the form environment, and when you finish the form environment, it is over. Now you can always go back in and edit that, but you will not be able to go back through any kind of captured history. It is just what you are currently working on. That said, the form environment allows you to do sculpting. Now, Fusion 360, like many other CAD software, like Rhino and SolidWorks, these are not for high detail sculpting. These are for more of things like car bodies or boat hulls, airplane fuselage, or, as you can see here, the example we're going to be working with today is a spoon. Now, wow, that is vastly different than like a car versus a spoon, but what I mean is versus like sculpting like a face or a coat on a minifigure with high detail textures and things like that. It's not what this environment is for. Now, we're going to push what we can do with it, but the form environment is much more for doing general sculpting things, and that's why the ultimately the projects we're working with are a bit more soft. And what I mean by that is more rounded features. You can still have creases, things like that, but I don't mean for super high detail. So great, all said and done there. Let's actually get into here and see what we're talking about. Now, one of the first things when you click the form environment, you'll see everything changes. You can still sketch in the form environment, but you have your variety of tools. You have box, plane, cylinder, sphere, torus, quad ball, and pipe. These are just the general tools that are brought up. Wait, why do we have two different balls? We have sphere and quad ball. Sphere is like a globe, longitude and latitude, that sort. You have your 2 points at either pole. Quad ball is essentially a cube that has been inflated to the point of being a sphere. So they are different things and they're different, they'd be used differently, but in the end, yeah, you're starting with a sphere. Now, the whole thing is you're starting with general shapes that you can manipulate. You can even start with simple faces, and you can extrude, revolve, sweep, and loft with these. But you'll see the difference is rather than like we have done in the solid environment, much more of a solid shape that you're creating, you have all of these individual faces and edges that you can manipulate from. And that's exactly what we're going to be able to do. Now, over the next tab is modify. There's a whole bunch of here, but the main ones you need to concern yourself with for now is just edit form, which is literally being able to take that pre-made form or one that you create and manipulate it. We can also do things like insert an edge, which I'll explain what we're really talking about here with edges and things in a moment, but it just inserts more lines. We are going to be using the bridge tool today. That creates a, well, bridge between two opposing faces. So, you have one on the side, one on the other side, and it creates what? A bridge, builds together. There are ways to just join those together, like weld vertices that brings those together. So you're not adding faces, but we'll get to that. There's a bunch of other ones we'll deal with. We're also going to deal with adding symmetry. So you can make things that are symmetrical. It's a lot easier than trying to keep it all in track by hand. So let's get into the actual the first parts. And just so you can get a better understanding of how this works, I'm going to create a plane. Now, a plane works as a T-spline plane, and I'll explain what that is in a moment, but essentially we're just creating a plane, like a sheet of paper. So select a plane to work from with the XZ plane, just smack in the middle, and you'll see the floating toolbox. You have two options, center point and 2 point. This is like creating a rectangle. I'm going to use center point because it makes more sense. Right smack in the middle, and I just drag outward. Do not click enter, use your mouse, and you can either do this by dragging or use tab to change back and forth by entering things numerically, whatever you want. But don't hit enter, use your mouse click to click. Now you'll see the toolbox changes. One of the things that's irritating, but it does. And now you can also go back in and manipulate these individually. But the other options are with this slider as well, and over here, you have faces you can increase. Let's bring up more. I'm just including more of these, and let me switch over to Shift In. No, it's not going to let me do it while I'm in this environment. I'll increase the size just so you can see what I'm doing. I was going to try and change the color so you can see things a little more clearly. This is essentially a pretty good summation of what the form environment allows us to do. Now I'm just going to hit OK. I don't know why it's not letting me. Hello. All right. I made no change. Now I can't hit OK. Weird. And let me hit Shift In now so you can see a little more clearly. All right. This is a summation of how the form environment works and how T-spline modeling works. Your overall surface is just that. The entire thing is a surface. Selects everything. You have three different components. You have faces, which are the in-between areas. You have edges, which are the lines. It can be just as one segment. Double click and it selects the whole line. That is an edge. Edge doesn't necessarily mean it has to be on the outside edge. It can be, but it's any of these lines. Any of these lines are an edge. Between those edges is a face. Wherever those edges intersect is a vertex, a vertice, a vertex point, a convergence. Vertices can also be on the edges. It doesn't have to be a four-sided convergence. It can be more than four edges. But wherever those combine or overlap, it is a vertex. And at the edge of each of those, this is a vertex, and it forms a T. That's why it's called T-spline modeling. Now, great, forms a T, but why the spline? These are all straight lines, but how these get manipulated is essentially like spline modeling. What we've talked about before, fit point splines, making curves based on multiple points. Let me bring up the modify or the edit form, and I'll show you what I really mean because this is exactly the whole point of it. T-spline modeling, we can select, if you look in the toolbox, we can select by different ones. If you look straight down, your selection filter, you can select all the things, which means faces, edges, and vertices, or let's isolate it just by faces. You can only select faces. You can select multiple faces, whatever. Edges allows me to only select by edges. It's easier to work with sometimes, or by vertex. And now you see how all the little vertex points popped up. That's what we're going to be working with. Now, I just realized I'm getting a weird curvature on things, and that's because for some reason I've noticed Fusion has started or has sometimes will change the camera view to orthographic. No, I am orthographic. It just for some reason looks curved. Must be an odd um, optical illusion. Anyhow, what we're working with here is you can pick any of these splines, or sorry, any of these points, these spline points, and drag them up and down. And as I do, think of this whole thing like a net, like a sheet, like a fish net. You have all those edge lines. It's not a great analogy because like the faces would be the empty spaces between. But either way, wherever those strings meet is a knot, is a vertex. And I can drag those vertices up, down, move them around, all that kind of thing. And with all of that, this is just me dragging one point around. And you can see how everything moves around like a fit point spline. If I select multiples, let's press and hold shift, select more than one. Now I have a much larger area of effect. We can move these around. If I have more than one, I can even start to twist them, any of that. If I select by edges, I can just do exactly that. Grab by edge, and it moves the whole thing as a single edge. Double click brings up the whole linear spline. Drag around even more. Now you can see the edges themselves start to get it, or the outline edges even start to start to interact. I can even select by faces, drag that whole thing out. But just to really show you how much further you can take this, I can press and hold. Now on PC, it's press and hold Alt, and on Mac, I believe it's the same, but I'm actually extruding outward. I can scale. This inner one is a three-dimensional scale, so all three areas. You can see these lines in between on my little gimbal here. I have this flat line between and the curved line in between. That is a two-dimensional scale. Dependent on what two planes I'm working in, that's the direction of the scale. A single one scales it straight up and down. But if I can continue to press with each segment, press and hold Alt, drag again, and you can see how it's actually adding more faces by edges. I let go, press and hold Alt again, drag it again. You can see how you can really start to manipulate things, and you can also very easily get very, very lost in this. But scaling up and down, warping, all of that. You can even go in, select a face, and delete it. You have to be outside of the uh, edit form, but select by face, delete a face. Now I have an open, weird shape. Now, one of the things about this is all of this manipulating, this is essentially just a sheet of paper thick. So when I go to hit finish form, just like we would when I go to finish sketch, hopefully, I don't get any errors. That happens, but great. You can see the difference on the left-hand side here on how things are normally expressed as solids, like all these tools up here. The blue, they're all in blue. Solid body, solid body, solid body on our project tree here on the left. But this thing I just created, it is represented by this orange cylinder, well, incomplete cylinder. Looks like a sheet of paper rolled over. It's exactly what it is. Yes, this form has shape, but it does not have any dimension, and that's why it's expressed as a color on the outside and this yellow or gold color to the inside. That's how Fusion represents it. I need to add dimension to this. So go back to the bottom, right click on the last one, on the last form, go to edit form. The one other tool we're going to use in this case right now is thicken. So it's literally add thickness to a form. And it doesn't have to be just a single thickness wide. You can keep repeating this, but let's do this. Now, this is essentially a three-dimensional offset in all directions, so you have to be careful. Don't go too far. Self-intersections will cause errors. I'm just going to select three. Let's see what happens. Bam. Now there's actual dimension to this. Hit finish form. I did not get any errors, and now this body expresses as a solid. So that's how we're going to create things. Simple manipulation, but it can get really complex very fast. So how are we going to put this into play? Let's make a spoon. Simple tool. Give me 1 second. Okay, so just for the sake of clearing things up, I'm going to start a new component. So going up top, new component, not connected to anything at all, just spoon. Helps me keep things clear. Now, you do not in any way have to work from an image, but it can help just to simplify things. So I already found a good image. I'm going to use a canvas. Select canvas from the computer, spoon image, XY plane, just to help myself out. Hit OK. Now that's quite tiny. So let's go ahead and do two things. One, I want to try, whoop, I don't know where that all went. There we go. I want to try and get this image closer to on the x-axis. So let's find that canvas image, and I'm going to edit that simply by just dragging this up and over a little bit, and I'm going to try rotating a wee bit. Oop, apparently that many is too much. So let's try 1 degree. Try two. Other way. Apparently somewhere in between. Whatever. Does not have to be perfect, but close enough is close enough. There we go. Okay, fine. It's in the middle. One of the reason I'm doing this is because you want to try to work smack on one of the axes because we're also going to be using symmetry. So right there. Now let's calibrate that. About how big is a spoon normally? Uh, Somewhere around, let's say 180 to 200 millimeters. 180 is probably a pretty large one. So we'll go to the canvas image, right click to calibrate, pick 2 points, the two endpoints. Right now, that is expressed as 14 millimeters, very tiny. Let's bump that up to 160. Hit enter, giant. Press F6 at the top of your keyboard to resize. Okay, now we have something to work from. Let's go into the form environment again. Now, this is going to be comprised of two separate parts. Now, components, parts, so do not hit finish form until I tell you to. We're going to build this out of a sphere and a plane. You don't have to do it this way, but just for the point of showing you how these are done. Let's start with the sphere. I'm going to start my plane that I'm working on, the XY plane still. It's important for this project, for this exercise, we stay on the x-axis. I don't know why my image moved, but it did. So I'm just going to create a sphere right about there. We're going to make this more or less about the size we need to start, like side to side. Yes, my image got messed up. It's fine. The reason I'm making this smaller than I need to is because I'm going to change it around. Does not have to be any specific size or anything like that. Now, as you see as I orbit around, you can see that I have a fair bit of complexity in my shape. I would like to dial that down a little bit. What I mean by that is, especially when you're starting, it makes so much more sense and is much more achievable to dial down the complexity of the shape, the edges, the faces, now rather than trying to work your way through. So let's dial it back a little bit. On the toolbox, I'm just going to move down a little bit. Now, the only trick to this is you have to be careful. I want to make sure that I maintain one of these axes, one of my faces, along the x-axis. So you see how this one is continuing through? Great. I can dial back the top and bottom as well, just again to make it simpler. I can add complexity later if I want. It's up to you. If you forget this step, it's not a big deal. It just helps to make it more simple now than later. Okay. The other thing I want to do is I want to apply symmetry now. I might as well. You see this other option in the toolbox before you hit enter? It says symmetry none. I want to add mirror symmetry, which is just that mirror side to side, left to right. Now you have options here. Sometimes things get toggled because it's relative to what the object is currently oriented as. So height symmetry is the one we want. You can see how a green line appears on what is the equator right here in the middle. If you forget, I'll show you the other ones. This is the one we actually want, not top and bottom, but I want left and right. See how it's also in line with the axis, the red axis. That's what we want because I want to use a top and bottom, left and right, side to side on this. If I selected one of the other ones, and you can select multiple ones, top and bottom, left, right, great. I don't want that. Just the side to side. Hit OK. Great. That's what we have. Okay. Now we're going to delete half of it because we can actually make use of, like we showed with the example, the fact that these are manipulatable to the point to where I can chop them apart. So use a from the right selection box. So start your cursor on the right side, click and drag so you have the yellow box, and select the entire top half. Do not go past the halfway point. Keep your box above the halfway point. Got all that? Hit delete. There you go. Now I have a scoop. That's actually exactly what I want to do. All right. Now, one of the things that's difficult to do is, well, actually, it's very easy to get lost, is working with the edit form tool. Now, I prefer, like for this project, I'm going to work by vertex. If you work by all, it's easy to get confused, see how complex the gimbal is. And the gimbal I'm referring to is all of these selectable options, these arrows, these boxes, these cursors. I'm going to select by vertex, and you can see all the vertices get highlighted. They're all visible now. Great. Switch to the side view on your view cube. So in this case, yes, it did get changed around, but my side view is currently the back. Fine, not a problem. What I want you to do is I want you to just select From the left, so start your cursor on the left side of the object, from the left and drag right, but avoid the top row. So I have all of the lower rows. And I'm just going to use the arrow key to just drag this upward. Okay, I'm just making the bowl more shallow, like a spoon. Do it again. Next row of vertices down. Select from the left, drag right, drag it up again. You can see how the whole thing's shrinking. Do it again for the next row. If you go too far, you're going to end up with this like inverted hat. I don't want that. I don't want a hat spoon. Keep it down below, and I'm just shrinking this up. Cool. Okay. Now I have kind of spoon-like shape. It's a bowl. There we go. The reason I'm working from one side only is it's easy to get lost when you're in this perspective view. There's too much going on. So now that I've finished from the side, let's work from the top. Select the top on your view cube. Now, yes, my spoon image got a little funky, but that's all right. We'll deal with it. We'll just work around with that. It does not have to be exact. So from the left and selecting all but to the halfway point, so everything to the left. Now I'm just going to drag that left a little bit toward the front. See how it starts to get kind of like an egg shape. All right, select out of that. Now I want just this middle row to the left from the left selection box, and I just want these points. Drag that forward. You can see how this starts to become a point. Great. That's pretty much a spoon. If you wanted to shrink this whole thing, as it's a little bit wider than I might want, select the whole thing, and we're going to use the scale tool, which is these bars in between. You can see how my cursor highlights over these bars around this square. Square is free transform. I don't want that, and oh my, look at all the chaos it does. Control Z, Command Z. I want to use the scale tool, click and drag that, and you can see how it shrinks it in and out. Everything gets scaled. Cool. Again, this is your spoon. Do it how you want. But again, I want to keep this on this center line. If you want to drag it outward, cool. Make it a wide spoon. It's your spoon. Okay, that's pretty much it. As in, yeah, that's kind of spoony enough for me. We're not trying to make it exact. Doesn't matter if it fits the image perfectly, especially since the image is kind of a little wonky anyway. All right, that's the spoon. Now, technically, I could actually drag these edges by using the form edit and actually drag that outward, which does some real weird stuff. Or I can actually, like we showed you before, extrude things. But I don't want to do that. I want to show you how to use this other set of tools first. I want to create now a plane like we did before. Select the area you're going to work. So I'm keeping it, building the same plane. And I'm making a plane on that plane just to keep it plainly confusing. Sorry. On my toolbox, yes, center rectangle. Make sure it stays as center rectangle selection. And I'm going to start somewhere on the x-axis, not the green, the red x-axis, the same thing I made the bowl, for the sphere for the spoon bowl. Select somewhere on there, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to drag outward. Do not connect with the spoon bowl yet. Make sure you have plenty of space between what your plane will be and the spoon bowl. Make it as wide or as narrow as you want. It's up to you. Click OK. Great. Again, we can add and subtract faces along the length as we like. Do not add too much complexity. That's going to get just crazy. Let's keep it dialed back to like 3 or 4. Cool. Now width, yes, I only want 2 faces. So a top and bottom, left and right, just like we did for the spoon bowl. So again, we'll put symmetry, but I want to show you how you can do that afterwards as well. So if you forget to add symmetry before, hit OK. Oops, I meant to add symmetry because I want to make sure that if I modify something, it does it to both sides at once. So let me hit Control Z, escape out of that. There's the tool here, symmetry, mirror internal. As you can see from the pop-up, it makes a mirrored version from left and right on a T-spline. The drop-down has many more options. The only one we're going to worry about right now is mirror internal, the very top one, the very first one. Select that, and it's asking you to select a face. The cool thing about this is you don't even have to designate like specifics. It's just, all right, where do you want your mirror line? I want it on one side of this face and this face. So you can see where the green line appears. Yep. Let me turn off my canvas so you can see a little more clearly. Green line appears straight through. That's my symmetry. Easy. Very easy to work with. All right. Now from here, let's make our spoon handle a little more spoon handily. We're going to go back up to the edit form, selecting by vertex again. That's just my preference. You can work with whatever. But now, let's see by edge. Just to give you the example, let's select by edge. If I select the one, it's going to automatically select the other. And now I can drag outward. If I want, I can drag this one. Giant, do not go the opposite direction. See this neat twist? That's going to cause a lot of problems later. So keep it all on the same side. By edge gives you more control over a larger span, but again, you have a larger span to work with. But you can use like this arc tool. See as I mouse over this kind of like half circle, that allows me to rotate in and out. So I can get some cool flares, things like that. You can get a lot of variation here. And no, your spoon does not have to be like a realistically usable spoon. You could make it a god-awful, unusable handle if you like. It's your project, doesn't matter. I'm going to select my vertex again. Select this point. I can drag in and out, shrink it, or I could also use the scale tool, but I have to use scale, I have to select all of them. So it's kind of your choice. You just want to select just the one, use that one. Great. I can move these around with free transform. Don't get too close. We want to keep this gap. So whatever you do, playing around, fine, do that. Now, one quick problem. You see what's happening here as I zoom in? I'm getting these control points. The whole thing somehow started to warp. That's when I used that scale tool. I think I used it wrong. So you can manipulate things still, and these are just control points. But if you get this weird curvature where it looks like it's curving in on itself, Control Z or Command Z, just back up to where it's flat again. There we go. I did something I don't like, so I don't want that to happen. That's going to cause some errors. My control points moved around somehow. I'm not sure where that moved from. So there we go. Now as I move them in and out, it's staying put. Good. I've had that happen before, and it causes obviously some real problems. All right, let's make it a weird chonky spoon. Okay. Now what if I want the back of the handle to actually be rounded? Well, you can delete faces, you can delete edges, you can delete vertices. So just by zooming in and selecting just that corner vertex, corner, I hit delete. Now it shrinks everything, but now it is much more rounded. So if I want to now go back and stretch that out again, go back to edit form, now I only have this one vertex, but it makes for a more complete curve. So it's up to you. Whatever. We're just playing around. Okay. Now, like that spoon handle, you can always make it move up and down as well. So go back to edit form. Let's select some of these points. I'm just going to drag upwards. Same here. Don't know why that's rotating. Weird. Anyway, but one of the things that I have found, let's drag this whole handle just up just a little bit, just so there is both a gap between the spoon bowl and what my handle will be, and also it's slightly higher above. You can see if I were to select it right there, it's too close, but higher. Let's not do that. So Control Z, Command Z. I got a gap. I got a vertical space. Cool. Hit OK. That's what I wanted. F6 to resize. Neato. Now for this part, I'm going to hide the canvas just because it's getting confusing otherwise. Before I get too far along, and if you haven't, you really should have started with, let's save here. Spoon, handle, and bowl. If I can spell. Great. Okay. Never hurts to save before you do a larger operation because, hey, if something goes a little haywire, it's better to have a backup. Oops, dropping coffee. Okay. So the next step is we've made our bowl, we've made our handle, pretty straightforward. I want to join these together to complete my spoon, but I'm going to use under modify bridge. It's about a third of the way down. And you can see create segments to connect between two opposing faces with a body or between two bodies. Select one set of edges, then the second. So let's select bridge. How this works is it selects an edge on both sides of my symmetry. So I select one, it automatically selects the other, but just in case, I selected both. Go back to the toolbox. Now choose side two, and I can double click on this one. It selects both of them. It's hard to see, but it highlights it in yellow. I really wish there was a better color and more bright. Now, you can select this preview toolbox or on the toolbox's checkbox, and it'll give you a preview. Now, a lot of you it might give an error. And what happens is the reason that you'll often get an error, most common, is the number of sides have to match. Number of sides, number of edges, number of face edges. So on the bowl, I'm going to treat it as 1, 2. So it's 2 on one side, either side of my symmetry line. On the handle, 1, 2. Same deal. What if you run into it where there's more than one, or there you have too many on one side or not enough on the other? You can delete edges, but it usually works better to then use an insert edge to bump up the numbers on one. So let me just hit cancel real quick. I want to show you. What if I ran into it and my spoon handle had more than one? Insert edge works by doing just that. You can select an edge, and let me just select by both so that way it keeps it even. And you see how there's this green line between on both sides here? You can use the slider to drag it further or closer to the original starting point. And when I hit OK, makes it more complex, but you see how it added some edges? That's how that can work. Now, in this case, I do not need that, fortunately, but if I needed it, you can add complexity that way. Let me hit Control Z to bump that back. I didn't need it because both of mine match, but just so you're aware of how that works. Modify bridge. 1, 2. Go back to the toolbox, side 2. You can double click because it's limited to right here. Sorry, there's a fly in my face. Preview. Now, one of the things, again, want to keep this simple. The number of faces it's trying to create, you can see 1, 2, 3 on the toolbox. 3, let's dial that way back. Let's keep it at 1. Makes it easier. Hit OK. And it did not move either the bowl or the handle, but it basically works as a loft tool. It transitions from one side to the other and creates a bridge. Nice. All right, that worked perfectly well. But if I were to hit, let me go ahead and save. Bridge. If I were to hit finish form, and it does work, you can see it's still being expressed as a surface. This green cylinder. Orange cylinder. Keep doing that. Kind of pink on one side, gold on the other. I need to add a thickness to it. So let's right click and we just go to thicken. Now, some of you might run into, if there is in your sculpting, in your moving vertices around, if you run into a weird spot in the bottom of the spoon, I've had it happen where as the people were moving things around, this bottom kind of got twisted or something like that. If you run into that and you're just trying to figure out how to untangle the bottom here, don't bother. It ends up being such an odd thing to try to untangle sometimes. I'm just going to go to the bottom, and like I said, I can just select faces and delete them. So I'm going to do a selection box to all the center ones. Just hit delete if you run into this problem. Mine did not, but there we go. Now, granted, technically, now I just have like a useless spoon. But if you had to do this and you couldn't untangle what happened to the bottom, it's sometimes easier just to delete the faces. I'm going to go to modify and fill hole. It's just below bridge. Fill hole does the same thing. I select an edge, and sometimes you have to double click to select the whole thing, but it worked already. Now, you have options on the fill hole mode. Reduce star, fill star, sometimes looks good too, or collapse, which basically takes it right back to where it was, only no errors. I didn't have any errors before, but there we are. One of the things, though, always, well, I won't say always, but it does seem to help the most. Check the checkbox that says weld center vertices. See a little shift happened there? That usually is somehow what the original problem was. I hit OK. I'm essentially right back where I was. Now it does look like it kind of flattened it a little bit for some reason. So if it did, all right, not a big deal. Edit form, grab just that point, and I'll just drag it back down. Hit OK. Great. All right. So I just wanted to address that in case you run into that issue. So next thing is just thicken. Select the thicken tool, select the body. You have two options beyond the how thick do you want it. Sharp thickness, hit OK, and it leaves it kind of like a big chunky spoon. Obviously, 3 millimeters is pretty thick. Or you cannot um, go back and change that, but you can Control Z, reapply thicken, and let's change the thicken type from sharp to soft edge. Same deal. Now it makes it more like a safety spoon. You can see the edges are rounded. Nice. The last option there, thicken no edge, is for doing something else. And you can see that what it does is it creates two floating surfaces without the edge at all. Not what we want. Other reasons you would do that for more custom work, but in this case, pick one of the two, thicken either sharp or soft edge. It's up to you. All right, finish form. There you go. Now we have a rather chunky looking spoon. You could always go back in if you want, edit form, say, you know what, I like this, but now I want to manipulate it further. I don't know. Let's go by face, select that one, and drag it outward, anything like that, inward, anything else. One of the things you might notice as I'm doing this, you see this ghost image of the handle? Because there is no um, linear time capture for when you're working in the form workspace, what Fusion will do is it will give you a ghost image of what it was. So that way you at least have some kind of a reference point of where it was so you can at least try to manipulate based on that. Meaning that, okay, it used to be wider. I wanted to make it thinner. Well, by how much? Well, visually you have at least that kind of image reference. That's why that's there. That's all. Hit OK, finish form, it recalculates, you're all set. And there you go. So, finished spoon or spawn, apparently. Whoops. Obviously, the last step would be shift back to color mode, add an appearance, and I don't know, let's go with why not a everybody's got chrome, copper, sure, shiny copper. Neat. And there you go. Now, one last step with this project is you have a spoon, you have to make three different utensils, two of which can be similar. What that means is I have this spoon, I can manipulate this using what we've already learned throughout this course. Let's take this spoon, and I'm just going to leave that as spoon. I'm going to copy paste. So literally copy, Control or Command C, Control or Command V, copy, and I'm going to move a copy over. That's going to be my original. Neat. I can now manipulate one of these. Say like, we'll use this one. Going to go to top, just viewing, sketch, like I normally would. Let's turn this into a spork. So how would I do that? I'm going to start with a center point rectangle, somewhere in the center. Sure, draw that out. Excuse me. Let's add a fillet to this corner. This corner. Why am I bothering to do this? I'll show you in a moment. I'm just making those rounded. Oh, now I've done this before. I accidentally grabbed not the corner, or not the edge, but the corner. So let me Control Z that. There we are. Why is that not hiding? There we are. I was trying to just add a fillet to here and to there. There we are. My fillet did not work the first time. I'm just rounding that out for a reason. I'll show you in a moment. Hit OK. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this sketch to extrude downward. So I'm going to make copies of this first rectangle. So go to create rectangle pattern. I want this. Direction is symmetric. Oops, wrong one. That one's symmetric. Goes in opposite directions. Bring my spoon model back up. Let's do more than that. Let's say 5. Makes more of them. Okay. Now, finish sketch. I want to extrude all 5 of these sketches. Cut straight down. If it's too far up, you might have to do a two-sided sketch or extrusion or just symmetric. So it goes up and down. Great. Hit OK. Now I have a rather chunky looking spork. That looks like it's a better back scratcher than a spork. Whatever. You do you. Last step would be let's add some fillets into this. Let's make these a bit more rounded just for grins. All right. I don't know what will be too much. 1 apparently is much too much, so zero point 0.5. There we go. A 0.5 millimeter fillet rounds all those out. And okay. That is mildly unnerving. I really don't like how that looks because it's just kind of creepy. Anyway, I'm going to change that to spoon scratcher or stretcher because apparently, again, I can't spell. All right. So that is one simple way you can easily modify an existing form to make a variation on a theme. So I've showed you examples before of how I can turn this into like a strainer, like I did before. Open up these bodies. What was I extended one, made it a long handle. Let me reactivate the entire project. So I made one, a variation of a very long handle one. I made one as a strainer. It's up to you. Making variations at least gets you part of the way there. So again, the goal of this with is using the form workspace, create at least one utensil, and then make a variation, however you interpret that. But that's the basic introduction to the form workspace. Hopefully helps, but one of the best things you can do to learn the form workspace, experiment, play, mess up, try to fix it. There are so many more things to learn with this workspace, but don't forget, this is not a forget everything you know kind of situation. This is simply there's another version of what we've already been working with. These are still working with sketches, extrudes, making rectangles, that kind of thing. Only now we can manipulate those pieces individually with far more dexterity. That's all. So hopefully you have fun with it. Good luck with it. And if not, well, troubleshoot. All right. Thank you very much.